Throughout the history of cinema, the word vulgar has been one of Hollywood's favorite accusations. From the silent era through the streaming age, it has been used to shame actresses for speaking too freely, dressing too boldly, or simply for refusing to fit a mold. Yet, as time passed, what was once considered scandalous often became celebrated. The women branded vulgar weren't simply rebels. They were pioneers who reshaped the boundaries of film, fashion, and femininity. Below, we trace the stories of 20 actresses who scandalized audiences, rattled censors, and forced society to rethink what could and could not appear on the silver screen. Mae West, turning vulgarity into stardom. Mae West was unlike any other woman in early Hollywood. While most 1930s actresses were styled to appear modest, polite, and demure, West leaned in the opposite direction. She dressed in skin-tight satin gowns, spoke with a sultry drawl, and filled her dialogue with playful double meanings.
Well, when I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
Audiences didn't just laugh at her jokes, they blushed at them. Her reputation for indecency began even before she reached Hollywood. In New York, she wrote and starred in Diamond Lil, a stage play filled with innuendo and brazen one-liners. By the time she hit the screen, parent-teacher groups and religious leaders were outraged. They warned that her jokes and costumes would corrupt the nation's morals. When the film industry created the Hays Code, a censorship rulebook meant to keep movies clean, it was Mae West's movies they cited as evidence that stricter control was necessary. But West had no intention of softening her act. She once quipped that every time a critic denounced her as vulgar, box office numbers jumped. "Censorship made me rich," she said. Her unflinching confidence turned her into one of the most recognizable stars of her era. Even though she was forever branded vulgar, she wore the label like a crown, becoming the embodiment of Hollywood's first bad girl. Jean Harlow, the platinum blonde who sparkled with sin. If Mae West was the queen of innuendo, Jean Harlow was the goddess of unapologetic sexuality. MGM transformed her into a glowing fantasy, bleaching her hair until it gleamed white blonde and dressing her in shimmering gowns that clung to her body. In films like Red-Headed Woman, Harlow didn't play nice girls. She seduced bosses, betrayed wives, and fought her way to the top with laughter and slang. She tossed around lines that critics claimed belonged in back alleys, not movie theaters. Newsweek described her as the girl who made sin shimmer, and audiences couldn't get enough. Her off-screen life matched her on-screen image. She went out dancing in daring backless gowns, often cut down past the spine. Tabloids feasted on her nightlife. Yet friends insisted she was gentle and polite when the cameras weren't rolling. That contradiction, the sweet woman behind the brash screen image, fascinated the public. Tragically, her death at age 26 froze her image in time. For generations, she has remained Hollywood's eternal bad girl, bold, young, and unforgettable. Theda Bara, the birth of the vamp. Long before West or Harlow, Hollywood's first true scandal was Theda Bara. In 1915, when film still lacked sound, Bara created an image so shocking that her name became synonymous with sin. Studios marketed her as a woman of mystery, claiming her name was an anagram for Arab death. Her breakout role came in A Fool There Was, where she played a seductress who ruins a respectable man. The intertitle, "Kiss Me, My Fool," became legendary, as audiences had never seen a woman so brazenly command passion. Posters showed Bara draped in exotic fabrics, snake jewelry, and tiger skins. Churches condemned her films as satanic temptations, and small-town theaters sometimes refused to show them for fear of backlash. Off-camera, Bara was reportedly quiet and thoughtful, but the studio kept her image alive with stage publicity photos surrounded by occult props. Though many of her films are now lost, her vamp persona endured. Every femme fatale that followed, from noir sirens to modern thrillers, owes something to Theda Bara, the woman who first made silence feel dangerous. Marlene Dietrich, breaking boundaries with style. Marlene Dietrich brought European sophistication to Hollywood, but she also brought a refusal to play by society's rules. Her film Morocco, 1930 shocked audiences with a scene in which she, dressed in a tuxedo, kissed another woman on the lips. Critics called her wardrobe vulgar and immoral, especially when she appeared in tailored suits or men's top hats. Dietrich dismissed the outrage with a simple line: "Clothes have no sex." For her, fashion was a weapon, a way of declaring independence from the rigid definitions of femininity. Her life off-screen was just as unconventional. She held dinner parties where fine wine and caviar sat beside sausages and sailor songs. During World War II, she sang at the front lines for Allied troops, once again in her signature tailored suits. Soldiers adored her, even as moralists continued to call her indecent. In the end, Dietrich turned vulgarity into performance art, blurring gender lines and showing that allure didn't have to follow tradition. Jane Mansfield, Hollywood's loudest blonde. If Marilyn Monroe was marketed as champagne, sparkling, elegant, and smooth, Jane Mansfield was marketed as soda pop, fizzy, loud, and liable to spill over. Arriving in Hollywood in the mid-1950s, she became famous for daring publicity stunts and revealing outfits. Her most notorious moments weren't even scripted. At parties, she accidentally popped out of her dresses, leading photographers to capture wardrobe malfunctions that filled front pages. She starred in The Girl Can't Help It, where her walk was so exaggerated that milk bottles exploded on screen, a visual gag that critics dismissed as tasteless. While tabloids painted her as shallow, Mansfield was far from it. She read philosophy, spoke 5 languages, and had a quick wit. But she couldn't escape the vulgar label, especially after starring in Promises, a film that included the first nude scenes by a major Hollywood actress. Her life ended tragically in a car accident at 34. But Mansfield remains a symbol of excess and spectacle. Where Monroe was elegance, Mansfield was outrageous fun. Hedy Lamarr, from scandal to genius. Before she became celebrated as the co-inventor of technology that led to Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS, Hedy Lamarr was infamous for her scandalous European debut in Ecstasy, 1933. The film contained nudity and a daring sequence of implied self-pleasure. Religious leaders and politicians across Europe and America denounced it as vulgar filth. When MGM brought Lamarr to Hollywood, studio head Louis B. Mayer tried to erase her past. "She will be a lady now," he insisted, even as gossip writers whispered about the naughty European picture. Still, her magnetic beauty carried an edge of forbidden danger. Ironically, Lamarr's mind was even more extraordinary than her looks. During World War II, she co-invented a frequency-hopping communication system meant to stop Nazi torpedoes. But reporters preferred to ask her about romance, not science. "Any girl can be glamorous," she later said. "All she has to do is stand still and look stupid." Lamarr was never stupid, but because of one early scandal, she never escaped the vulgar label. Betty Page, the pinup girl who shocked the Senate. With her jet-black bangs, mischievous smile, and a figure made for cheesecake calendars, Betty Page became the face of mid-century pinup culture. She wore leopard print bikinis, Santa costumes, and skimpy lingerie in thousands of photos. But what made her infamous were her so-called specialty shoots, low-budget films and stills that playfully depicted bondage, spanking, and leather costumes. For Page, these were simply modeling jobs. She giggled through the sessions, often appearing more playful than dangerous. But for conservative America in the 1950s, the idea of a woman posing with a whip was shocking. In 1957, a Senate Committee on Obscenity actually screened Betty Page's bondage shorts as evidence of moral decline. Senators clutched their pearls while Page smiled and cracked her whip on screen. The contrast was almost comical. Off-screen, Page was a devout Christian who attended church regularly, baked cookies for neighbors, and lived modestly. The gap between her wholesome private life and her scandalous public image only added to the mystique. For decades, she disappeared from the public eye, struggling with mental health issues. Then, in the 1990s, she was rediscovered as a cult icon. What was once considered vulgar became fashionable, Her photos now grace t-shirts, mugs, and tattoo designs. Betty Page's story shows how cultural context shapes morality. Yesterday's obscenity became today's nostalgia. Rita Hayworth, one glove too many. In 1946, Rita Hayworth set the screen ablaze with her role in Gilda. In the film's most famous scene, she performs a slow, sultry striptease. Yet, she doesn't even remove her dress, just a single satin glove. That was enough to cause uproar. Parent groups protested that the scene was immoral, vulgar, and indecent. Life magazine, by contrast, hailed it as one of the sexiest performances in movie history. Meanwhile, soldiers overseas already knew Hayworth as the ultimate pinup. Her photo in a lacy negligee adorned countless barracks walls during World War II. So much so that chaplains complained it lowered morale by raising temperatures. Yet, Hayworth herself was deeply uncomfortable with her sex symbol image. Born Margarita Cancino, she was naturally shy and devoted to her craft. She practiced dance until her feet bled and wanted to be known for her artistry, not just her curves. Men go to bed with Gilda, she once said sadly, but they wake up with me. The gap between her true self and her on-screen persona haunted her. Still, the glove removal scene has become legendary. In just 3 minutes, Rita Hayworth proved how little it took for Hollywood to label a woman vulgar. Clara Bow, the it girl who was too real. The Roaring Twenties gave the world Clara Bow, the original it girl. Her wide grin, bobbed hair, and restless energy captured the spirit of the flapper age. Audiences loved her for being authentic, unpolished, and relatable. But critics, still clinging to Victorian sensibilities, often labeled her vulgar. In It, 1927, she threw herself into a department store display to win a boyfriend, moving with a physical comedy that older reviewers deemed unladylike. Off-screen, tabloids claimed she danced until dawn at the Coconut Grove, drove her car too fast down Sunset Boulevard, and flaunted a collection of lovers. She also posed in swimsuits without stockings, scandalous in 1920. But fans adored her. Young women copied her haircut, her slang, and her carefree attitude. She represented freedom. Unfortunately, when talking pictures arrived, Bow's thick Brooklyn accent became a liability. Critics mocked her speech as coarse, reinforcing the vulgar label. She retired young, retreating to a Nevada ranch where she raised horses. Only later did film historians recognize her as one of the first actresses to bring real, modern energy to the screen. Proof that vulgarity was often just another word for authenticity. Marilyn Monroe, Beauty Under Siege. Few stars endured the tug-of-war over vulgarity more than Marilyn Monroe. Her image was built on contradictions, soft and vulnerable, yet bold and sensual, shy in interviews, yet smoldering on screen. In 1951, she attended a premiere in a gold lame gown so tight she could barely sit down. Columnist Earl Wilson declared her cheap and vulgar, a headline that spread nationwide. Monroe responded with a clever stunt. She posed for photos in a potato sack, joking that critics would find even burlap indecent on her figure. Her films often pushed censors to the limit. In Niagara, 1953, she played a woman having an affair. One scene of her walking in slow motion was nearly cut for being immoral. In Some Like It Hot, 1959, she wore gowns so skin-tight that Catholic watchdog groups issued formal protests. Behind the glamour, Monroe longed for respect as a serious actress. She read Dostoevsky, studied acting, and wanted to be taken seriously. But she knew she was trapped. A sex symbol becomes a thing, she once sighed. And I just hate being a thing. Her legacy is bittersweet. A woman adored by millions, yet forever branded with a label she could never escape. Brigitte Bardot, Scandal in the Sun. When Brigitte Bardot danced barefoot across a beach in And God Created Woman, 1956, she rattled the world. In the film, Bardot exudes raw sensuality, a carefree spirit that defied the buttoned-up morality of the 1950s. The Catholic Legion of Decency condemned the film. U.S. mayors threatened bans. Variety used the word vulgar repeatedly in its review. Headlines screamed that Bardot was sex on a beach towel. Yet Bardot herself shrugged. "I am immaculate," she told reporters. "I have nothing to hide." Her off-screen life mirrored her roles. She sunbathed topless long before it was common, had high-profile affairs, and refused to apologize for living on her own terms. Paparazzi hounded her every move, desperate for scandalous photographs. But Bardot was more than tabloid fodder. In films like Contempt, 1963, she gave nuanced, emotional performances. By the 1970s, she stepped away from cinema entirely, devoting her energy to animal rights activism. The woman once called the epitome of vulgar freedom became a passionate advocate for compassion. Her story shows how the very qualities once condemned, openness, boldness, sincerity, later became the foundation for her respected second act. Raquel Welch, the fur bikini phenomenon. Sometimes a single image is enough to define a career. For Raquel Welch, that image was a publicity still from 1 million years BC, 1966. Dressed in a fur bikini, she became an overnight sensation. Teenagers plastered her poster on bedroom walls, and critics scrambled for words. Vulgar appeared in many reviews, alongside prehistoric cheesecake. Welch's films often emphasized her looks. In Lady in Cement, 1968, a scene of her surfacing from a pool was described by critic Roger Ebert as a vulgar exercise in cleavage. When she starred in the satirical Myra Breckinridge, 1970, Time magazine lamented that tastelessness hits its nadir. Yet Welch fought against being pigeonholed. She argued that if male action stars could bare their chests, she had every right to bare her shoulders. She lobbied for roles in comedies and dramas, proving her range in The Three Musketeers, 1973, where she showcased comedic timing. Later, she released fitness videos that were sometimes deemed too daring for morning television. Over time, her poise and longevity softened earlier criticisms. Raquel Welch emerged not as a punchline, but as a survivor, an actress who wielded beauty like a weapon, but aimed it at carving out her own space in Hollywood. Sharon Stone, the scene that wouldn't die. In 1992, Sharon Stone was a relatively unknown actress when she starred in Basic Instinct. One interrogation scene changed everything. Sitting in a chair, she crossed and uncrossed her legs. The moment lasted only seconds, but it became one of the most infamous images in film history. Censors called it gratuitous vulgarity. Newspapers splashed it across headlines. Some theaters even posted warnings about the film despite its rating. Stone suddenly found herself at the center of debates about morality, female sexuality, and exploitation. Stone defended the role, arguing that her character, a brilliant, manipulative novelist, was a woman in control of her own sexuality, flipping the script on decades of objectified female characters. But the label stuck. For years afterward, she was asked not about her acting craft, but about that scene. In time, she redefined herself. Roles in Casino, 1995, and later humanitarian work for brain injury survivors gave her a second narrative. Sharon Stone's career is a reminder that one provocative choice can define an actress for decades, sometimes as an insult, sometimes as a legacy. Elizabeth Berkley, from sitcom teen to cult icon. When Showgirls, 1995, was released, the knives came out. Critics savaged it as vulgar trash. Headlines called it career suicide on celluloid. The NC-17 rating doomed it at the box office, and Elizabeth Berkley, once the wholesome star of Saved by the Bell, became Hollywood's cautionary tale. The backlash was brutal. Senators referenced the film in debates about pornography. Late-night hosts made endless jokes. Studios refused to hire her. For years, Berkley bore the stigma of that vulgar movie. But time shifted the narrative. Showgirls developed a cult following, celebrated for its campy excess. Today, it's screened at midnight festivals with cheering fans. Berkley reinvented herself, performing on Broadway, embracing her camp icon status, and founding self-esteem workshops for young women. Her story proves that vulgarity often says more about the culture passing judgment than about the actress herself. Madonna, Queen of Controversy. By the 1990s, Madonna was no stranger to scandal. In 1992, she released a coffee table book titled Sex, filled with provocative photographs that bookstores refused to stock. Yet, it became a bestseller. A year later, her film Body of Evidence, 1993, was branded vulgar, obscene, and unworthy of her star power. The NC-17 rating made headlines, with critics accusing Madonna of dragging Hollywood into the gutter. But she thrived on controversy. For Madonna, vulgarity wasn't a setback. It was a marketing strategy. She argued that women had the right to claim sexual power, just as men always had. While her quieter roles in films like Desperately Seeking Susan and A League of Their Own proved she could act, the world preferred to talk about her scandals. Today, what once seemed shocking feels almost tame compared to modern streaming content. Madonna remains a reminder that vulgarity is a moving target, always shifting, and often weaponized against women who take control of their own image. Pamela Anderson, the Baywatch bombshell. In the 1990s, Pamela Anderson became the most watched woman on Earth thanks to Baywatch. With her red swimsuit and slow-motion jog, she was both fantasy and punchline. Critics sneered at the show as slow-motion vulgarity in prime time. Her film choices, like Barbed Wire, 1996, didn't help. Reviewers dismissed them as cheap, exploitative throwbacks. Anderson admitted she leaned into the caricature, but she also insisted she was in control of her own image. Men run around in swim trunks, she pointed out. Why can't I? Beyond the glamour, Anderson was a passionate advocate for animal rights, speaking to legislative bodies in sharp suits rather than swimsuits. But headlines rarely gave her credit for activism. Instead, they reduced her to one word: vulgar. In her later memoir, she reframed her life story, exposing the exploitation and media manipulation behind her fame. Pamela Anderson's career shows how society punishes women who monetize attraction while applauding men who do the same. Kim Basinger, the ice scene that froze Hollywood. In 9.5 Weeks, 1986, Kim Basinger and Mickey Rourke turn a love story into an erotic opera. The infamous Ice Cube scene became a cultural flashpoint. Critics accused the film of being softcore pornography masquerading as art. Churches denounced it. Some city councils even debated banning it. The word vulgar appeared in nearly every review. Basinger, who had begun her career as a model and ingenue, was suddenly typecast as Hollywood's boldest seductress. But she resisted the pigeonhole. She later bought an entire town in Georgia with plans to turn it into a film hub. A bold move the press derided as tacky and vulgar extravagance. Financial troubles followed, but Basinger persisted. Her comeback came with L.A. Confidential, 1997, where she played a glamorous call girl with wounded dignity. The role earned her an Academy Award and proved she was far more than her earlier reputation. Kim Basinger's story is one of reinvention, showing that even actresses branded vulgar can eventually be celebrated for their depth. Angelina Jolie, from wild child to humanitarian. In the early 2000s, Angelina Jolie was Hollywood's most unpredictable star. She gave interviews about her tattoos, collected knives, and wore a vial of Billy Bob Thornton's blood around her neck. Tabloids painted her as bizarre, indecent, and yes, vulgar. On screen, she fueled the image with bold roles. In Original Sin, 2001, she starred in steamy scenes that had critics dismissing the film as all sweat, no story. Yet, Jolie's fearlessness also made her magnetic. Then, she transformed. Channeling her energy into humanitarian work, she became a UN ambassador, adopting children from war-torn regions and lobbying for refugee rights. Slowly, the label of vulgar faded, replaced with visionary. Angelina Jolie's evolution shows how Hollywood's vocabulary shifts. What shocks one season may inspire the next. Mamie Van Doren, drive-in rebel. In the 1950s, Universal Studios wanted another Marilyn Monroe. Their answer was Mamie Van Doren, a bubbly blonde with a rebellious streak. Cast in movies like Untamed Youth, 1957, she shook her hips, sang rock and roll numbers, and played bad girls in tight sweaters. Church bulletins warned parents that her movies glorified juvenile delinquency. Critics called her films corny, noisy, and often vulgar fun. But teenagers loved her. She cruised around in a champagne gold convertible, blowing kisses for publicity stunts arranged by the studio. Off-screen, Van Doren was surprisingly wholesome. She performed for U.S. troops in Vietnam, cracking clean jokes that contrasted with her sultry screen persona. In later years, she embraced her legacy, appearing in documentaries about 1950s censorship and laughing at how tame her once scandalous wiggle now looked. Mamie Van Doren's story reminds us that yesterday's vulgarity is often tomorrow's campy nostalgia. From silent-era snake jewelry to slow-motion beach runs, these 20 women reveal how fluid the concept of vulgarity has always been. What was once condemned as indecent is now iconic. Each time society drew a line around propriety, these women stepped across it. Theda Bara invented the vamp. Mae West mocked censorship. Bridget Bardot danced barefoot into scandal. Sharon Stone and Elizabeth Berkley faced modern culture wars. Madonna and Pamela Anderson turned vulgarity into their own form of power. The lesson is clear. Vulgarity is rarely about indecency. More often, it is a reaction to women claiming control over their image, their bodies, their voices. By daring to shock, they didn't ruin Hollywood. They reinvented it.